Hi, I'm Jacqui Swift, and I'm joined today by my guest, Lorna Walker. Lorna, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Obviously, you know, we are friends. We've known each other for some time. Our children go to school together. We share a lot of values and passions, and I'm really excited to just dig deep and get a grip of your journey, how you've gotten to where you are as co-founder of Camion, and to hear about that journey that led to you achieving that goal. So to start us off, do you want to just well, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. So Lorna, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you come about your career and, going into like your university years as a graduate and then into employment? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So, if I go right back to the start, since you just mentioned that as to why did I even choose the career that I chose in the very first place, I would just say I have always been interested in lots of different things. Like one of my kind of fundamental values and passions has always been learning new things and being curious about new things. And that has been true throughout my whole life. I love learning new things, and I also love meeting new people. And so university, I had studied modern languages with economics. And as part of that, I spent a year abroad in France, which was lovely. I got to live in Paris for a year and I loved it. But actually, I had really just stumbled across the role that I took whilst on my year abroad. So I took a job as an intern with a property company at the time called DTZ. And they're now part of a business called Cushman & Wakefield. And whilst there, what I learned about property was you could actually have this one career, but within it, you could have loads of different careers, and it touched on so many different things. And actually, if you look at the fundamentals of property, really what is property? It's buildings that people live in, that they work in, that they play in. And in order to create and nurture the right type of property, it's all about people. You've got to understand the people who are occupying those buildings. And it was very much a people industry as well. So having done that year abroad, I decided actually, I really loved the idea of being part of this industry that really has the power to transform people's lives and allow them to thrive in the spaces that they're operating in. So that's actually what led me to choose a career in property in the first place. So after university, I was then fortunate enough to get a position as a graduate at CBRE, who are the world's leading property consultancy. And that has given me a really fantastic base. I was there for 12, nearly 13 years. And it was a fantastic place to launch my career plus some, because they're very much the market leader in so many different sectors, but you've also got the opportunity to do lots of different things within one company whilst moving around in the same place.
That sounds amazing. And, speaking from my own knowledge of yourself, it is true that everything that you do, you throw a lot of passion into it. And, that screams when you're talking about property, and when you had that first insight as an intern when you were in Paris and you thought, okay, well, this sounds amazing. I'm going to develop into that. So talk to me a little bit about your time in that position at CRB, and tell me, okay, in that position, because obviously it's such a vast organization, tell me, how did you find you navigate your way through that as you started, in respect of going in and thinking, I'm going to be spread across all these different areas. Tell me about what you gravitated towards and what your experiences were there when you first joined.
One of the great things about that sort of big organization is that there's lots of market leaders, people who are market leaders in what they're doing. And so I really took the approach that I wanted to meet as many of them as possible, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And actually, that has been something that I have had in every role that I've done, is that actually, if I've stopped learning, then I'm not sure it's really the right thing for me to be doing. And I had sort of almost 4 or 5 different mini careers within CBRE. I started as a grad, and I did valuation, which is a real kind of fundamental principle of property. And then I did mixed use development. And that also gave me qualification during those years as a chartered surveyor. So I'm a member of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. So you've got a professional qualification that underlies what you're doing. And then I went into real estate finance during the global financial crisis. So that was really fascinating time to learn. And actually, I will always contend that it was probably the best thing to happen, because actually there's nothing that teaches you how to take things properly and how to buy property well or how to manage property well than seeing it when it has gone really wrong.
That's an interesting point that you make. Yeah. Absolutely.
And some of the situations that we came across, I was flabbergasted at what had happened, and actually just the lack of really basic due diligence that had been done on some of these and some of these transactions. So that was really valuable, actually, learning to go through.
If we could pause on that a second, tell me, what was your biggest takeaway during that period that you thought, you're there, you're eager to learn, this massive event has just happened, everything's kind of crumbling. And as you reflect and look back, what could be one of the biggest takeaways that you took from that experience?
If I'm honest, at the time, I'd say I didn't really understand the gravity of the situation. And actually, I was probably cocooned a bit within this big corporate. And,
yes.
You were, as graduates, or, I was recently qualified, you're generally much lower paid. And so you're less likely to be a target of, when they're restructuring the business or, moving people out of the business. But I think one of the things that I really took away from it is you've just got to do a really excellent job and align yourself, not just align yourself, I was going to say align yourself closely with key people. But I think especially at the earlier and kind of mid stages of your career is if you do an excellent job for somebody and you make them look really great, then you become indispensable. Make yourself indispensable, actually. So probably one of the things that I learned in that period was make yourself indispensable. Because if you're indispensable and you work really hard and you learn new things, and I learned so much. And actually that was one of the things that I think really helped me to stand out during that period is that I could learn really quickly as well. And I was really willing to learn quickly. And actually that's something that I feel quite lucky to have this temperament, but I love learning from other people.
Yes.
And taking on other people's sort of information and their guidance and direction. And I love getting that. And that continues. But if you're able to take that on, it's just so much better to learn from somebody else than having to go through your own mistakes. But yeah, so I would say make yourself indispensable. But in a slightly weird twist to this, I would say that in more recent years, when I have become a senior leader myself, and I think this has also probably been a bit of that shift from corporate into the startup world and leading your own business, is I've actually had to try and lose some of that as to trying to make yourself, say, indispensable or doing something for somebody else. Because actually, you're doing it for yourself.
Yes.
And you're doing it for like a real purpose as to what is the business trying to achieve. Now, often that means that we might be now trying to make ourselves, at Camion, my role at Camion, indispensable to our clients.
Yeah, so it's a shift in the mentality.
But actually, it's something that I have definitely had to learn is that I shouldn't just be trying to serve one other person. And whilst that can be really valuable, it's a really important shift. And I actually think, and I know you and I have talked before about this, really kind of, leading your own path and having the confidence to do that without worrying too much about what other people think. And I think that in a sense, doing that too much in the early part of your career could always kind of hinder you a bit when you get to this part of your career. So just be aware of that.
Because it's such a departure, isn't it? Like trying to become everything that you are being molded to be for that person, for that company, for that industry.
Exactly.
To then step away from those principles as a business owner, as a co-founder, as an entrepreneur, and try and find your own path and go, okay, well, actually, this is what matters to me. This is my vision. This is my team's vision. This is where we want to go.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. And actually, one of the things that I would say about that is that can happen, I think, in corporates, is that people are molded to that corporate way of thinking. And so I really contend that you need to try and keep that sense of innovation and trying new things, even within a corporate context. And actually, I then moved on again, over this period of time. And I joined a team that CBRE had bought out their business. It was a business called Frank Warwick, led by a guy called Franco Sodoli. And Franco was very much seen, and still is, as one of the industry leaders and the best in the business at what he does, and as an investment agent. Okay. And so I was very lucky to get a role basically as his right-hand person, having moved into CBRE. But what was fantastic about that is that I still had this big corporate beer moth around me. But this business that had come in was so entrepreneurial and driven and ambitious. And I learned a lot from that. And having said that, I think that's one of the things that CBRE certainly was good at and has continued to evolve, and other corporates do this as well, of actually trying to foster innovation within a big corporate environment as well. But I think for me, I ultimately wanted to have unfettered access to being able to innovate and operate in an entrepreneurial way, which probably led to.
And I think that's a testament of your character, because it shows your willingness and your drive to keep going, because so many people would not be pushing because they feel it's not their place to push, or that they're too junior to push, or going, I want unfettered access to you. And for somebody on a senior role. And if we could just press pause on that a second and really reflect on, obviously it's a property world. Talk to me about your mentorships around that time, who you found inspiring, whether there was somebody there that you felt that you saw as a mentor that you admired in, what is such, a male dominated environment, and about your journey into that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really difficult question, actually. There's, I had quite a few different people that I would say that I learned from over time. And actually, one of the realizations that I came to, which at the time I found quite depressing, but is also, I think, the reality, is there is no one person for you to be.
Yes.
Like, you're not going to find the person and think, oh, I want to be them.
Yeah.
Actually, you need to be your own person. And I think I did, have a period where I was trying to think, okay, well, who is the person that I want to be? Or so who's going to be my mentor that, exactly want to be? They didn't exist. But actually, I don't think, I think a factor in that is, as you say, that we had such a small proportion of women in senior positions in the industry, and we still do, actually, in the property industry. Now, that's not to say that I could only get mentorship or sponsorship from a woman, but I do think that the likelihood is that actually it may be another woman who's going to have the same sort of characteristics or things that they really care about, or sort of approach to a situation as me. There's more likelihood that I might kind of come across them. So I would say, actually, what I did is I got a kind of hodgepodge of support from different sources, and I really had some fantastic mentors over the years. In terms of like immediate sort of bosses of mine, but also other senior leaders, both in the business and actually in the broader industry. And that's probably something that I've always been very good at, which is like just asking people, because. What's the worst that they can do?
What have you got to lose?
They'll never, nobody ever said no. They might just not reply to your email, but it's not that bad. And so actually I took quite a few, and still do, take opportunities to sort of really just meet people that I wanted to meet. And whether that was through, in my very early days, when I was still doing my master's in real estate, and I did a big dissertation as part of that, but it was whilst I was working. So I took the opportunity to actually get introduced to the head of the real estate teams at all the banks and things like that. And it was great. So I also then built up those kind of relationships. And then whilst at CBRE, I then, met other sort of people more broadly in the industry. And, when I sort of wanted to sort of spread a bit more broadly in terms of connections from a sustainability or social impact perspective, I managed to meet people who really were at the very top of their field, and, chief execs of the major housing associations, quite early on in my career. And you'd be surprised at how happy they are to actually give you their advice,
share their time,
and share their time. Yeah.
And like you say, if you don't ask, what's the worst that can happen? So if you had one or two pieces of advice that you could say to somebody that's listening to the podcast and is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, or setting up on their own, or, taking that leap into the unknown, into the world of it's all on our shoulders. What would you say? What would you be? What would your younger self, or reflecting back, looking at it, go, okay, well, if this was me, or if this was Georgie starting up now, what would you say?
Just be brave and just do it.
I love that.
Yeah, just do it. And I look back at my time at CBRE, I was in the corporate for such a long time, and I really did get something valuable out of my whole time there. But as a whole, it was 12, nearly 13 years. And I kind of think that was too long. I can't pick bits of it that I would take away. So I don't want to say that I did it wrong, but I feel like it was a long time for me to have been in a corporate and to have not tried something new. So just like be brave and give it a try. And ultimately, one of the things that was really playing in the back of my mind when I ended up leaving CBRE was, well, what's the worst that can happen here is I just come back and get another corporate job.
Yes.
It's not so bad. I've got some very solid skills, I'm employable, and so I'll give this a go and see what happens. And as you know, Jacqui, the first startup that I did, Modomo, didn't quite go as planned. No. So if I had wanted to, I could have then fallen back on, my worst case scenario, which is not that bad a case of going back into the corporate world. But having done it, I was never really going to go back to it.
No, but I think that one of the things that, we can both agree on, and I think this is why we have a genuine connection when we first met, is that in order to take that step, to be an entrepreneur, to be an owner, to be a founder, you have to have that appetite for risk and know that, okay, you will learn more from not succeeding or from learning, taking them as learning opportunities and go, okay, well, let's reflect on that. And you're very good at reflection, and we'll come to your time, in Modomo and your journey into Camion. But I really want to understand, you've been in the corporate world and you've got a true passion. Again, since I met you, I know how passionate you are about ESG, about sustainability, about our planet and what the future will look like for the generation to come. And obviously that has a different take on you as well, because you're a parent as well as it is for me. And that certainly, for me as a parent, it definitely opened my eyes more as to what we should be doing. So talk to me about what made you go from, okay, I want to leave the corporate world and I want to take the leap into startups and be a founder. And where'd that drive come from?
Yeah. I have always had this innate sense of social justice from being a really young child. And yeah, all through my childhood and teenage years, I've felt extremely strongly about a lot of social issues. And the climate crisis is the defining issue of humanity. It's not even of our generation or of our era. We are really, in a huge existential crisis. And there is no greater cause of social justice. And having been in through the corporate world for quite a long time, I think that was one of the things that I, around the time that I went on maternity leave to have my daughter, I took some time out of that, corporate environment. And I don't think it was actually just to do with having a kid at all. It was just taking a break for a few months. So I would also encourage anybody to just take a break for a few months, because it's so great for your brain to just chill out a bit, relax, then think about actually, what do you really want? And I then look back at, okay, well, when I started out, what did I want? And I was going to change the world. And I was, having a great time at CBRE, and I was working on some really high profile property transactions. We sold Madame Tussauds, the waxworks in London, and, big office blocks across Europe and, elsewhere. But I was going to change the world. And it gave me that moment to actually take a step back and think, okay, well, actually, if I'm going to do that, how am I going to do it? And I wanted to do something that was going to have, a kind of a real meaningful impact, and also had the opportunity to be really scalable. I wanted to have the opportunity to do something that could scale and could genuinely be transformational.
Yes. And I think that, to this day, you still believe that you're going to change the world. And I think that's what drives you. and I love that about you, because that, we all do our bit. And you're always talking about, well, if we all do our bit, that's our path into change.
Yeah.
So obviously you mentioned that your first startup, in Modomo, and that was a reflective time for you as you moved on from that. Do you want to go into a little bit about that, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned just earlier about learning from failure, and not that that was a failure, but I think what is incredibly important, is to learn from those times that were maybe more challenging or didn't quite go as planned. And I learned so much from my time at Modomo. And there is no way that I would be doing such a great job at what I'm doing at Camion if I hadn't gone through that. I learned lots about teams, about co-founder dynamics, about fundraising, about having a product that you're really crystal clear and focused on.
Yes.
And so I've been able to take all of those learnings into what I'm doing now. So, there were times when actually I really loved the journey, and we were very close to achieving something that I think could have been really great. But there were also times that were really challenging within it. But I look back on it now and I'm so pleased that I did it and I went through it, because it's made me who I am now. And
Absolutely.
That's what's helping me to succeed and shape me as a leader in what I'm doing.
And would you agree that, looking back at your time in Middoma and having that ability to reflect and go back and look at the learnings instead of, being held down by, so many people would turn around and be, down in the dumps about it, or well this and that, and instead of doing that, you focus and you go, okay, well, with drive and determination, this is what I've learned, these are the amazing experiences that I was exposed to, and now I'm going to grab that, all of the positive that I learned, and I'm going to apply that now as I move forward in my career.
Yeah, so I just think it's really important to be able to kind of take those sorts of lessons and have a positive and optimistic outlook. And I think I'm also quite blessed with having that.
Yes.
It's that I do have an optimistic outlook.
You do.
And sometimes I almost need to check it a bit, because you need to make sure that you've also assessed like the risks of a situation or a transaction, for example, in a business context. But I think it's looking at, okay, well, where are the opportunities? And it's important to take those moments of self-reflection, but take that self-reflection and then take it forward and actually look at, okay, well, how can I use this and what can I do with it?
And during your journey, you've also, become a trustee. You also set up a networking event, which, I had the pleasure of attending in November, Peer 20. And, I think that the story behind that is wonderful, because, you started this with the idea of you invite 10 people, those 10 people bring a +1, and you've got 20 people in a room that have different backgrounds, different experiences, and you can have a round table basically talking around passions and, how you can all collaborate and connect and have that supportive network, even though you're not all in the same industry. Because when you come together and you collaborate, you get that beautiful flow of information and that, connectivity. So talk to me about what inspired you to start this networking event.
Yeah, so it was 2012. So it's probably also the heady days of leading into the Olympics. I just thought anything was possible. And I had started working in 2007. So I'd been working for 5 years. And what I became really aware of was, in those early years of your career, you still had a very strong network from university, which was quite broad because people had gone off into lots of different careers. And you'd met a lot of people in the early years of the industry. But actually, as time went on, you had fewer opportunities to network and meet new people, and in particular to meet new people who weren't in your specific bubble.
Yes.
And the property industry, as I said, it's very much a people industry, and so there are a lot of events or organizations and opportunities to meet people, but generally they'll be doing similar sorts of things. But actually, I really felt strongly that if you wanted to really thrive, you also needed to meet people who are outside of your own bubble, and that idea of curiosity and learning new things.
Yes.
And so it was really driven by that feeling. And so and I'd also read this really great book by Mrs. Moneypenny from the FT who suggested something similar. And so I decided to launch Peer 20, and the flagship event of it is that we have this dinner, and you've got 10 people, usually our co-host with somebody, and between us, we already know 10 really great, interesting people, and we ask each person to bring their own additional guest. And whilst often, over the years, and what is it now, 12 years in, there has ended up being a bias towards the built environment. I try really hard to actually make sure that we're moving out of that, and we're trying to invite people who are not in just in those kind of specific sectors, so that we can all learn from each other, because I think we've got so much to learn. And as you know, recently we had one where we brought together the two different worlds of real estate and space exploration. I know,
that was amazing. I came home and I said to Teddy, I met a space lawyer today. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a space lawyer. And he was fascinating. And I loved, when he spoke with such passion and drive. And, when we were sat around amongst ourselves, and I said to him, how did you come about this? Because, when you said space lawyer, I thought, like, is this a joke? Is this a start to, like,
Does Lorna really know what she's talking about and who the speaker is going to be?
And, he just said, well, I had a love for space. And, I was told that, I have to go into kind of like a career path, a professional path, and that was law. And I just thought, how do I blend those together? And it goes to the core of what you were saying in respect to finding people in different industries that you have passions with, and, and bring them together. And I think that was an amazing element that you had, space, property, ESG, all of it combining it in the discussions around it. Yeah. And it was such a phenomenal event, wasn't it?
That was a really great evening. And what we've tried to do with Peer 20 is, our sort of tagline is connect, encourage, and inspire each other. And we say that the focus is on people who want to have a positive impact on society through both their professional lives and in their personal lives as well. And so it gives an opportunity to do that. And we have the dinners, and we also have a book club, and we've read a really diverse range of books over the last 3 or 4 years. And we've also had a number of lean-in circles as well. So sort of taking inspiration from the lean-in sort of network that exists, and using some of their materials and sort of creating our own kind of Peer 20 version of that as well.
Yes, and I think in this particular event as well in November, it was quite a privilege as well, obviously, to meet one of the individuals they invited, who was a woman in business, in property, who you've known for many years. She's, she's once somebody that you look up to and you admire. And hearing her journey as, she came into London, into the property world as well, for first day that, they didn't have mobile phones, that they had like one computer that they shared. And it's listening to those stories, and that, to think like, oh my goodness, like how far have we come, as a society, and technology and property, and how we've developed. And I think that it's, it's really important to continue to have these types of events because of the collaborative nature and that entry to give access to people who you wouldn't necessarily have access to and build a relationship with. So that must be an incredibly proud accomplishment for you.
Yeah, maybe it is. And I think I just feel also very privileged to have met some really fantastic people, and that actually people are, they're really generous with their time. And actually I think ultimately everybody else also wants to learn, and they want to meet new people. Yes. And so it's a really great opportunity to do that.
And, because you have so much spare time, and you're not a busy parent, you're not a busy co-founder, you're not busy running networking events, we've got all this disposable time you're not time for at all. You also devote your time as a trustee, in the UK Green Building Council. And, that goes into the passion as well that you have in respect to property. So talk to us a little bit about that, and how the charity works and what its main mission is.
So the mission of the UK GBC is to radically improve the sustainability of the built environment, which is pretty big. And it's a huge honor, but also a huge responsibility to be a trustee of an organization that has such a huge but important and critical task. And it may be important to understand that the built environment contributes around 39% of global carbon emissions. Wow. So it's enormous. And one of the really big challenges of the built environment, per a lot of what we've been discussing, is there is such a diverse range of players, of types of organizations, of types of people, of types of assets that fall under that. And so there's such a huge amount to do, and it's quite complicated. Yeah. It's not easy.
How do you, as a charity, how do you spread the load? How do you pick how to focus on, or how do you, because like you say, it's such a vast area to focus on, so much diversity within it, so much different critical impact that it could have depending on the area. How do you as a charity look to reach so many organizations and that are so wide ranging?
I think one of the things that we really look at is like, where can we have the most impact, and actually, where can we really move the dial? And so that's also looking at like, what are the unique skills of the UK Green Building Council? And one of those, I think, is collaboration. The UK Green Building Council is uniquely placed to collaborate with a lot of those different players. So actually, a lot of those different players, ordinarily, they wouldn't come together to work on topics, but actually through the UK Green Building Council, they will do that. And that's a really powerful force, and has definitely created change within the industry, and I believe will continue to create change within the industry. It has this convening power to do that. And sort of at its core, you could say, we need to learn from each other. There is no time for people to come up with their own little solutions and keep them to themselves. Actually, we're all on this journey towards net zero together.
Yes.
And we need to find the most efficient, the quickest, the smoothest way of getting there. So actually, collaborating together to figure that out is extremely powerful.
And I mean, it's a huge undertaking. It is such a huge goal to work towards and strive towards. We still live in a world that, we want the immediacy of those, of the delivery. We want everything on our doorstep within seconds. And that in itself has an impact. And I know you're very passionate about how you focus your own personal lives and in respect of, how you purchase things, how you look at, the sustainability, even in your travel. That's something that as a family you've really focused on and in improving your own travel arrangements, so that you're bringing up Georgie and as a family as well to understand, okay, well, this is our carbon footprint. This is the impact we have. So talk to me a little bit about that and, how you take steps towards improving that.
I think education is a huge piece of it, because I think, once you understand what's going on, then it becomes very clear that we've got a responsibility to act. But sometimes that's hard when you're operating in a world where it seems like a lot of other people don't care. And I find that really hard. But I think one of the things that you realize is you have the ability to control your own sphere. And so that's what you can do. And that's where you should put your efforts. And so I can help to impact the direction of the UK Green Building Council as a trustee. I can help to impact our own family's way of living. I can impact my friends' way of living, perhaps, through influencing them as well. And, there are actions that I can take. And, I've chosen to co-found Camion, a business which is at the intersection of real estate and clean energy. And I genuinely believe that Camion can have a truly transformational impact on the real estate industry, and capturing the clean energy opportunities that are that will be coming down the line.
And I think it's a really exciting chapter ahead for you as well. You're so passionate about, sustainability, in respect of what you were looking to achieve, even when you were at Modomo and, that step that you took to be a co-founder there. So we talked about you taking, some time to reflect and looking into your next chapter. So talk to us a little bit about how you decided to go into Camion as a co-founder, and what are the steps into becoming a co-founder in that organization?
Yeah. I was introduced to Jake, one of my fellow co-founders and chief exec of Camion, through a mutual friend. And I'd say kind of, very quickly understood that we had some kind of very strong overlapping areas of interest. And, Jake's background was on the sort of the EV and the clean energy infrastructure side. He was at Tesla for a number of years, from 2012 onwards. And he had some really fantastic experience at some other sort of startups and scale-ups on the energy infrastructure side. But he didn't have a solid real estate background. And actually that was the bit of the puzzle that I could bring to the table. And when we first started, we really started with a sort of very informal relationship where I was like, well, I can help you out. I can introduce you to people. And we didn't start thinking that we were going to be co-founders. I just thought it was a really great idea. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to help you. And which, as you know, at the time I was doing some consultancy. I should maybe have been trying to get more paid consultancy, but I was like, this idea is so great. And I loved working on it.
But doesn't that go to show about your excitement and your curiosity that you spoke about earlier, and the fact that when you find something that you're curious or that you're interested by, and your love for learning, this is something that flowed right into your wheelhouse.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the things that I could see really quickly with what we're doing, and this is why I stayed so interested in it, and it became, I think, very evident to both of us quite quickly that we were going to be working on this together.
Amazing.
Was that this clean energy revolution that's going on is at the moment, it's quite a separate world to the real estate world. And we needed to find a way to translate those and kind of cross over into each other. And we had a really unique chance to do that. And, the way that we've really focused on it is data, because actually energy is driven by data, and you have to understand the data. Otherwise, you're not going to achieve what you're trying to from a real estate perspective. And so we've gone really deep on the data side so that we can then apply that to the real estate opportunities. And every piece of real estate needs to be electrified. So they are one and the same thing.
Absolutely.
And that's where we're operating. And so I could just see this huge opportunity, and it's been a fantastic journey so far, and I can't wait for what's to come.
I really can't wait to see what you do with it also. And, I met Jake at the networking event as well in November, and he is such a character, isn't he? He's just full of passion like yourself. So I can definitely see how you two connected and felt that common ground in respect to passion and drive. So, I'm really excited to see what you guys do.
Yeah. And one of the things that I would say, that we've managed to do is that we've built a really fantastic team. And you need an excellent team, and we have an excellent team to deliver on our goal. And one of the other things that I've learned, and I would say that Jake and my fellow colleagues are really excellent at, is being really focused on something.
Yes.
And actually, really focusing on what we're trying to deliver at a particular time, and not getting distracted, but being really clear about, okay, what is the path to success? Let's focus on that bit and deliver it, and then build from there.
And I am certain that you will achieve it, knowing you as well. Lorna, I think that it's important to also touch on the fact that, you are a working mum, you have a young family, you live in Yorkshire, but, you travel to London, for work as well, and you do a lot of remote working. So talk to me about, how that journey's been for you as a mom, as a co-founder. What do you class as your successes, and what challenges have you found along the way?
Oh, I don't know, Jacqui. It just sort of happens. And somehow you muddle through it all. And
I've got this. I've got that. It's like just the constant juggle.
And I love being a mum. And, it's sort of one of the funny things is that, despite everything we've talked about, often, I will have big self-doubt about what I'm doing from a business or commercial perspective, and like, am I really good enough for this? And I don't think that always comes across, but I do often have that, like, am I good enough? Or is what I've done, is it enough? But actually, being a mum is something where I've never had that.
Yeah.
I love being a mum, and I love my little girl. And actually, I think that helps in every other area.
Yes.
That has really helped me in every other area of life as well. And so, I think, and I don't think it just needs to be kids, and, some people don't have kids and they will have other things. But I think having a rich, rounded life is really important, actually, because you can bring each part of what you're learning or how you are to other parts of your life as well. And it makes you, a richer person in everything that you're doing. And I love doing different things. So whilst I think some people look at what I do at the moment as a bit full on, which it often is, I love it because, I get to be up here in Yorkshire and hang out with you, or, head to the moors or go for a surf.
Or a wild swim.
Yeah, or a wild swim on a weekend, and you're in this really beautiful part of the world. But then, yesterday afternoon, I was in the middle of Soho.
Yes.
And I also think actually being in person with the team has been incredibly important for us. And that's part of the reason why, I've made such an effort to spend so much time in London whilst we're on this journey of launching Camion. And so I love, for me, having that variety works really well and I can get the best of both.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing that you can see that you can strive to have that balance, that you can come full circle and say, well, I can have a bit of everything. And, it's not for everyone, is it, having that busy juggle? But I think that, when you're an entrepreneur like yourself, that part of that, it's part of what comes with it, knowing that you've got so many different hats to wear.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about, you're obviously going from one hat to another on a daily basis. So how do you find time to switch off and go, okay, what do you do to recharge? What do you do to go take a step back and go, okay, I have juggled all day. I've been bossing it at work. I've been bossing it at being a mom. I've been spending time with my family, my husband. Where do you find time for yourself in all of that? And do you feel that is it important to take time for yourself?
Yes, it definitely is, Jacqui. I actually think it's one of the things that I've always been quite good at is I've always loved sport in some format, and I've always been quite good at prioritizing that. I love doing it, and so so for me that might be going surfing, it might be yoga, or it might be the gym. It's not running at the moment because of my knee, but maybe it will be again one day. But I've been quite good at that. Yeah. I'm probably less good at just stopping and being still.
I can't account for that.
But I think having those things is actually really important.
Yes.
And it's really important for me. And I'm really good at making sure that I do fit those in some way. And maybe it also helps for me is that I am somebody that I get energy from other people. And I know some people actually, they need to have their own space and that's how they recharge and how they get energy. But I do also, get energy from being with friends. And, and I think it's probably also important to say, I think, that there are definitely sacrifices that you make. And, being a co-founder of a business like Camion, I'm super focused on it. And I know that there's things that I would love to spend more time on, or friends that I would love to be spending more time with. But it will be for another chapter.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that. There's part of me that would love to be doing way more surfing and going way more often than I am. But I know that it'll come, and I do fit in enough of what I'm doing.
Yes.
But I also love what I'm doing with Camion. And right now, it's really important to be doing that. And so I do think it's also important to be open about the realities of having a business like that and co-founding a business like that. That sometimes we do have this narrative that you can have it all. and you can be really busy and you're doing loads of juggling. But you don't necessarily have it all. There's sacrifices within that. But I think what's important is that you're clear in your own mind what they are and you're comfortable with what they are. And as long as you're comfortable and clear with it, then I think you're in a good place.
And I think that's a really, important thing to kind of just take a moment to acknowledge, because when you're in that entrepreneurial role, when you are running a business, and especially in the early stages of that startup, that you think, okay, I have to dedicate this time, I have to focus on this mission, is knowing that it is okay to know that there is something that's going to have to be paused, put to one side. And it's like you say, okay, well, maybe not for now. There's room for that later. And having that ability to focus your mind on going, okay, what is the end goal right now? This is what matters, and this is what needs to wait, because this is not a no, but this is a next chapter potentially. Yeah. And so is there any advice that you could give to, any of our listeners today in respect of what steps you take to determine, okay, well, what is my focus right now? And, what you consider in respect of what you look to pause, or what balls you give yourself a break for dropping, going, okay, well, I couldn't make the gym 5 times a week this week. And that is okay because I'm in the middle of this really focused area that I have to give it all. How do you balance that? How do you achieve that understanding?
I think one of the most important things there is being intentional with what you're doing. So take the opportunity to step back and don't just let life happen to you. So think carefully about actually what you're spending your time on. And does that match with what you want to be spending your time on? And if it does, then great. But if you've ended up doing more or less of different things just because you were pulled in that direction, or somebody was asking you to, or that's what you ended up doing, then actually that's probably not where you want to be.
Yes.
So I think it's about being intentional with what you're doing, and so taking the opportunity to step back and really reflect on it.
I think that's really powerful, because one of my experiences has been that, when we go into businesses and things and we talk to, founders or CEOs or, the senior leadership team, is that there's so much time that is wasted on things that diverts them from their goal that they think is actually going to help them get, but it doesn't. It's just a distraction. It's kind of like something that's spurted out of it, and you have to come back. No, let's refocus. So the fact that you're saying, you're talking about intention, does this take you a step further to your goal? If the answer is no, do you simply just go, okay, well, we're going to put you here and I'm going to keep going towards my goal? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, exactly. A very practical tip.
Yeah.
James Clear is an excellent author, and he has an excellent newsletter that comes out once a week. And I always get something valuable from it.
Amazing. Well, I've just been reading this book called Finish. Okay. And that is also talks about, the ability to, we're great starters, but we're terrible finishers, and like we start so many things, we've got so many ideas, and as entrepreneurs and owners, we have so many things that go in our head. And I think that's one of the reasons we connected. Like the first time I met you, I could see your brain working at 1,000,000 miles an hour from the second we said hello. And you're talking to me, but I can see that also you're also having all these other things in your head going, oh, and Jacqui, oh, and what about this? And what about that? And da-da-da-da. And then you have to, sometimes make a note and go, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go there. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about how your mind works, because you just have so much passion in everything that you do, and that transpires in your friendships, in your in your family life, and into your business. And Lorna, I just cannot wait to see how your journey at Camion continues, and I know you will continue to thrive.
Thanks, Jacqui.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It has been an absolute pleasure to interview you and to hear so much more about your beautiful journey and your accomplishments throughout your career.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that, please like, share, and subscribe, and we hope to see you again soon.